nobody, even gifted people, can't be great at two things. Michael Jordan tried baseball, Beyonce tried acting, Bill Gates tried marriage. Listen, people cannot be great at two things, okay? That's just my rule. But what happens in football is you get Belichick, who is so respected for his football knowledge, you give him power in the draft. And he was a terrible drafter. Terrible. Kyle Shanahan has got so much aptitude as a coach. He is so respected. Half the league's using his schemes that I think he has way too much power in the building with personnel. And I'm not denying that the Niners have done very well with some late-round picks. Brock Purdy, Juwan Jennings, Kittle. I'm not denying that. But they have missed and reached on a lot of first, second, third-round picks. I'm not denying they've hit, like Hufanga at USC was a great player. Injuries he dropped. He's been a great player when he's healthy. I'm not denying that. Okay, I'm not denying that. He's no longer there, but I'm not denying that. But I listened to Kyle Shanahan. I heard a bite yesterday. It was on the Rich Eisen show, and he was talking about their theory on how they draft. And I'm like, I don't know. This doesn't sound like the way I would do it. Here you go.
It's hard to catch up with all those guys, so you got to depend on a lot of other people. One way we do it here is we give all the position coaches, a responsibility to make highlight tapes on everybody. And, they got to watch a lot of game tape to make those highlight tapes. And then I study their highlight tapes and I always tell them if I don't like their highlight tape, then I'm not going to watch anything after. So those guys got to put a lot of work into their highlight tape, because if they can impress you with that, I always say, what's the point of watching more? Which I would love to watch more, but that's the way you can get it done in a 2-month time frame. And when you do get it done, I definitely don't want to look at any more college ball until next February.
I don't know. Maybe that's the way to do it. But ask yourself this: what are the two best rosters in the NFL? In my opinion, Philly and Seattle. What do they have? Great and powerful general managers who can keep the coach at bay.
Okay. I'm actually really excited to talk about this, because this is such a complex conversation that everyone is very quick to have a really strong opinions about, which I totally understand. I really, really do. I just feel as though that we're not really being as favorable or forgiving of the 49ers. But I think it comes from two slightly different angles here. First off, the 49ers over the last a little under 10 years, I suppose, have really built some unbelievable rosters. The 49ers actually, 'cause I was really all in on football when I was younger, then definitely had a period where I kind of was just doing a lot of other stuff, there was just a lot other stuff going on in my life. So I wasn't able to be locked into football as much as I would like. And then when I kind of got reintegrated back into the NFL, right? Being a lot more locked in, it was like the 49ers were easily one of the scariest teams out there. And they've really kind of they've, of course, you're always going to ebb and flow a little bit. But they were that right up until 2024. Okay. Right up until 2024. After they lost in 2023 the Super Bowl. Then 2024 they get wrecked with injuries. And the team falls apart. What are you going to do? Happens. Then 2025 they were wrecked with injuries and were one win away from getting the 1 seed. And home field advantage in a first-round bye. Now, they were clearly not on the level in that moment of time against the Seahawks. And you could say, well, look what we did when we were healthy in the first game. And you could be like, yeah, but that was the first week. The Seahawks weren't really ready yet. Like everybody's kind of trying to figure it out and etc. etc. But what can't be denied is that the 49ers clearly would have been a much better team if they were fully healthy. And yet look at the success that they've had. Now, if the 49ers were an outlier of a team, if they were some random team that this happened with, then you could maybe not be so quick to give them the benefit of the doubt and not be so quick to kind of give them their what people would say participation trophy. But when you look at the track record of the 49ers, you're like, well, they clearly are a great team, they clearly know what they're doing, they're clearly well run. Look at the success that they've had. Like you don't have to reach on those things. right? The Commanders in the reverse way, and I just made a video talking about the Commanders. In the reverse way, the Commanders have been nothing. Jaden Daniels went to an NFC championship game, lost, and the following year they were banged up and went nowhere. And it's like maybe you shouldn't give them the benefit of the doubt there because they're not deserving. You can't say, oh, well, if they were healthy, then they would have been up. Low to compete for a Super Bowl. It's like, I don't know, maybe. They haven't done anything to really get to deserve that benefit of the doubt. The 49ers certainly have. And so in the reverse side of that, it's like look what they were able to accomplish with all these injuries. And what they've been able to kind of stay afloat. Like that's really impressive. It's not hard to imagine that if Warner, Bosa, Kittle, like some dudes are there that they would have maybe won more games and then they would have been the number 1 seed in the NFL. It's pretty great. But the problem is that they haven't won the Super Bowl. And that is why another team like the Chiefs, like the Eagles, like the Rams, like they are given even the biggest benefit of the doubt. Depending on the conversation we're having, whether it's a quarterback conversation, a coach conversation, an organization conversation. But it's like, okay. You can be more forgiving because it's like well the Eagles went to 2 Super Bowls played awesome in both. Yeah, they only they lost one, but still played great in both. And obviously all won one. The Rams, it's just like they won their Super Bowl. And listen, maybe they're still hanging on that thread, that kind of benefit of the doubt. Like, hey, we won in 2021. And it's like, okay, but then you lost in 22, 23, 24, 25. You were the best team last year apparently, and you didn't even reach the Super Bowl. You lost to the Seattle Seahawks. And now the Seattle Seahawks from my viewpoint kind of have a little bit of the reputation of, yeah, they won, but like people are kind of like, I don't know. Like Colin doesn't even have them reaching the NFC championship game this year. So it's just kind of like, are they going to be the same? Are they truly great? Was it lightning in the bottle? Can you really rely on Sam Darnold in the long term? Blah 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 blah. You lost your coordinator now going to become a head coach. And so the conversations here are just always interesting me. And now we're trying to dissect Kyle Shanahan's actual draft process. I'm telling you right now. I beg you guys to practice a little humility. I beg you. Someone said this recently to me because he thinks he's too cool for school and says Julian thinks he knows everything. And it's like that's not even remotely true. That is not even remotely true. I admit the things that I don't know all the time, and I concede to higher authority all the time. But when we're talking about something like the draft process right now for whatever reason, a lot of people are really confident how to go about the draft process. And what is right and what is wrong and how you're supposed to scout and how this is supposed to operate. And it's like guys evaluati. Talent is really hard. Figuring out what's going to work in the NFL is really hard. And I'm not saying what Shanahan is doing is right. And I do agree with Colin in terms of you can only be great at so many things. That has shown to be true in my own life, in my observations of other people's lives. And yeah, I do think it's a superpower when you can kind of focus on your own thing. And I think it's really important. And I realized this talking with other people who know football way more than me. But because of my own personal experience, because of my own personal expertise I'm like, oh, I offer insights or I offer perspective that you do not have. And part of the reason why you don't have that is because you actually know football too well. You know the X's and O's too deeply that it's hard for you to see other things. And contemplate other things and factor in other variables. That's where someone like me comes in. Right? And it's and we see real-world examples of this all the time, right? We see elite coaches be terrible GMs. We see elite players be unbelievable terrible owners, terrible coaches, terrible GM, whatever they end up getting. We've seen it again sometimes we see they're great. Right? It's not an all or nothing thing. It's not an all or nothing thing. But like I hear Tom Brady give advice on like how to be successful, and that always makes me laugh. 'Cause it's just like, buddy, you're Tom Brady. Yeah, but did you see where he got drafted? He's Tom Brady. I don't care where he was drafted. He was always meant to be Tom Brady. That's why he became Tom Brady. I always laugh when I hear the LeBron thing, I'm not even supposed to be here. Of course you were. Of course you were. You're LeBron James. You are an absolute physical monster. Just because some of the outside world was doubting you or overlooking you, but kind of not really because you were crowned at like 12 years old, maybe even younger. So like you were always supposed to be here. Didn't mean that it was going to be an easy path. Doesn't mean that it was an easy path, but you were always meant to be here because you were literally born to become 6 feet 8 inches, 250 pounds. Yeah, you had to put in the work. Yeah, you had to put in the effort. But you were always meant to be that. That's why you became it. Just saying. And that does not mean though that now you're set up to be great or be perfect at everything else. Anything else. So there is a value to understanding. I talk about this just as players. You have to understand your strengths and weaknesses. It is so important. I think about this a lot. And Colin highlighted this so beautifully years ago with Baker. He thinks he's better than he is, and that is a problem. Because it leads to mistakes. It leads to failures. And you have to understand what you can and can't do in any given moment. And it can be very little or very big. It could be as little as, and now this is what I was thinking about it actually literally last night watching basketball, watching someone go for a steal, and it was like you weren't even close for getting that steal. You misunderstood what you were capable of doing in that moment. And because of that, you went for the steal, you didn't get it, and then you gave up an easy basket. That has direct immediate consequences. Direct immediate consequences. So you have to have a great understanding of what you can and can't do. And coming from there dictates the rest of your decision making. And so it's just like again, I'm not saying that Kyle Shanahan can't do it or that he's not good at drafting or that he has too much power this or that. This is where things are always funny to me, too, because this is where we have to rely on people like Colin or any of the actual people that are legitimately talking to these people. Because it's so hard to know who really has the power. Who really has the power inside the building. From the outside looking in, we have no way of actually legitimately knowing. For all we know, let's just use the Eagles cause they're super controversial with like Nick Sirianni. For all we know, Nick Sirianni has essentially zero power inside that building. 0. For all we know, actually he has a ton of power. Not even over roster construction, because we know that is Howie, but in terms of like the actual offense, hiring of coaches, play calling, we don't really know. And so the only way we could know is listening to people that actually have insider information, people that actually are connected inside the building. Colin's actually talking to so-and-so, and he's like, yeah, Nick Sirianni doesn't really have any say over the offense in terms of the day-to-day operation. And it's like, okay. And you kind of have to trust those types of things. So when we hear about, maybe Kyle Shanahan having too much power, too much this, not enough that, it's just like it's always a little bit of hard to really know. And then even when people say certain statements, you have to figure out are they just saying it or is it actually based off of like legitimate conversations here. So that's where a conversation like this kind of gets messy. And we know that the 49ers have been an elite franchise year after year after year. Obviously they have some dips and dives, right? That's just look what happened to the Kansas City Chiefs, okay? So it happens to anyone. Happens to any team. Happens to any franchise. But it's just like a team that was a game away, really almost a crazy play away from having the 1 seed during a year that they were decimated with injuries, to then just kind of be dunking on them and be like, are they falling behind the Seahawks and the Rams? I don't know, you tell me. How good would the Rams have been, or the I guess Rams, too? If Puka goes down? I know the answer. They couldn't win. In 24 when Puka went down, Matthew Stafford threw more interceptions than touchdowns. And was awful. And they couldn't even beat teams like the Arizona Cardinals. Okay. The Seahawks? If Jackson Smith-Njigba goes down, if Kenneth Walker goes down, like I don't know. Are they just running through teams? Probably not. And then to some variation, that's what the 49ers have been dealing with all season long. Now, I do think there's still, and I want to end here, I do think there is too much of a heavy reliance on a Christian McCaffrey. And that is something that Kyle Shanahan has just been incredibly. First off, he's brilliant in that. Talk about strengths and weaknesses, it's an absolute strength for him. But it is something that at this point I'm kind of like, alright, I want to see what Kyle Shanahan can do beyond Christian McCaffrey. Because Christian McCaffrey's lifeline here is getting smaller and smaller and smaller with the 49ers. And so if anything, that makes me more uncomfortable than anything else. But, yeah, it's just that it is interesting to see the levels of success that the 49ers have had over these years. And have them kind of just being like, you're not really good at what you do. And it's like, well, of course they are, but in their own division, since the 49ers have been an elite dangerous suffocating team, two completely different teams in their own division went on and won a Super Bowl, and the 49ers haven't. That does matter. That really does. That is like if the Philadelphia Eagles went out and got Saquon Barkley and A.J. Brown and had all this and paid Jalen Hurts all this money, and they did not win a Super Bowl, but the Dallas Cowboys did and the Washington Commanders did. You'd be like, what? Like that it becomes inexcusable. It becomes unacceptable. And you're like, wait a second. What? The Commanders hadn't been doing anything for a year, right? So if the Commanders ended up beating the Eagles in 24, it's like, what? That's a problem. It's like that's a problem. And so that is something that does weigh on the 49ers. And truthfully, it should to a degree. It should, but what I'm trying to really encourage people is to not swing to the extremes. Not swing to the extremes. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the 49ers? How do you feel about their approach in the draft, the explanation that Kyle Shanahan gave? Do you think that the 49ers are indeed falling behind the Seahawks, the Rams, etc.? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. Please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here. I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.